What is the best, the greatest, the most stupendous Money in the Bank ladder match of all time, according to Wrestling YouTube? We're going to find out today here on SCW. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. I've got many talented wrestling content creators joining me on this video, giving their opinion on what is the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match of all time. And together, we're going to go through a journey on this video to find out which is the greatest. But before we start, I want to give a big thank you to every single YouTube channel that's got involved on this video. Very grateful that people like to get involved with these collaborations. So thank you for taking the time out to record clips for this video. And before we start, let's go through the rules of this video. All wrestling YouTube channels have been drawn at random. I will introduce who drew numbers 1 and 2. The channel will share their opinion on what is the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match of all time. This will continue until all wrestling YouTube channels have given their opinion on what is the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match of all time. YouTube channels with more than one person are voting individually. For example, 2 people from the same channel with the same answer equals 2 votes. Different answers from each member of a YouTube channel gives 1 vote to each Money in the Bank ladder match chosen. If you wish to know my favourite Money in the Bank ladder match of all time, I too am drawn at random and can appear in this video at any time, so you must stay tuned. I will keep you up to date with votes and standings at regular intervals throughout the video. The winner will be the Money in the Bank ladder match with the most votes at the end. Also remember that each channel is giving their very own opinions, so do not actually criticize them if you do not share the opinion that they have. Just simply let me know your favorite in the comments below. It's as simple as that. You can see then if you agree or disagree with us at the end of the video. Especially when it's the men's Money in the Bank ladder match from 2019, when Brock Lesnar just ran into the end even when he wasn't in the match and carried that briefcase. Although saying that, we did get Brock parties, didn't we? And it looked like a boombox, so hey, we'll wait and see. But without further ado, it's time to find out who drew number 1. And of course, it's a man who always puts a lot of research into these videos. It's great to have him back on, a regular on the channel as well. It is none other than NXTeve. NXTeve's probably watched all these ladder matches. Which is the best one? It is time to find out his selection.
Steve, thanks again for having me on the SCW channel. As always, it is a pleasure and a privilege. And this time, you want to know my personal favorite Money in the Bank ladder match. I did have this down to 2. I could have easily gone with last year's one because the match was really, really good. But for me, I've gone with 2014, the year Seth Rollins won. That was just Seth Rollins' year that year. The story that played out up until Mania when he ended up cashing in. Me personally, my favorite cash-in of the Money in the Bank contract of all time. It just culminated into one great year's worth of storytelling, and yeah, I just absolutely loved it. The competitors in it: Kofi Kingston, RVD, Dolph Ziggler, Seth Rollins, who obviously won it, Dean Ambrose, Wade Barrett was supposed to be in it, got injured 2 days before, which was a real shame, and even Jack Swagger, who I'm not his biggest fan, but had a really good showing in this match, and a lot of really good high spots. And for me, it's just up there as the best Money in the Bank ladder match. Thanks again for having me on, Steve, and I'll speak to you soon.
Big thanks there to NXTeve then. What a great selection as well. Seth Rollins winning in 2014. Arguably the last Money in the Bank ladder match that made a megastar in my personal opinion. But will it be the winner at the end of this video? Time will tell. In the meantime, we will see who drew number 2. And it's great to have 1/3 of this terrific trio back on the channel. Always going through your weekly content for you, whether it's WWE, AEW, MLW, ROH, always got you covered, as well as taking you to promo school. Of course, I am talking about West Coast PopCast. Zach's back in the house. Zach's, which is the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match of all time?
Hey, Zach from West Coast PopCast here. Steve, thank you so much for letting us be a part of this video. Always a pleasure. Folks, make sure you like the video and hit the subscribe button. This man puts out great content every week. But the question is, what is the greatest Money in the Bank match of all time? You can see the poster behind me, and I gotta say, the women's Money in the Bank match from 2020, the pandemic era Money in the Bank match, to me, was the greatest of all time. Once they took this match off of WrestleMania card, it doesn't really mean as much, and it just became a gimmick, just like Hell in a Cell, tables, ladders, and chairs, etc., etc. But this felt so fun. The women's match felt so fun. The women's portion of this was just so well done. So many different women had some shine as they ran through the building, Asuka jumping off of random places, and her taking home the Money in the Bank briefcase. To me, this was the most fun I've had in Money in the Bank since its inauguration at WrestleMania. Asuka winning was great. The night after with Becky giving her the title was great. I just had so much fun with this. I'll remember this one for a long time. These women really carried the pandemic era, not just for WWE, but for wrestling in general, and Asuka especially is the pandemic champion. That is my favorite one. Steve, thanks again for having us on, and I can't wait for this year's Money in the Bank.
You've got to love it, haven't you? Big thank you there to Zax from West Coast PopCast there. And I tell you what, a fun selection there as well. Then the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, of course, in 2020. Of course, in WWE headquarters. But now, you're not going to see my face for a couple of entries now. But when you do see me the next time, I'll give you the updated votes and standings. But in the meantime, let's get another content creator on, shall we? And someone who enjoys a bit of a rant, not going to lie about that one. This Week in Wrestling is his weekly show that he does. Always worth checking out on YouTube, and in fact he is a regular on this channel as well, usually with retro reviews. I'm talking about the one, the only Barry from the NWC Show. Non-stop wrestling chat is here on SCW.
Steve, thanks for asking me to take part in your video. It's always a pleasure to be on your channel. So, what is my favourite Money in the Bank match ever? Has to be the first one, doesn't it? The one at WrestleMania 21 with Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Christian, Kane, Benjamin and Edge. Edge gets the win. This one was just different, wasn't it? It was just, and it was mostly it was all Raw at the time. It was for the Money in the Bank case, obviously. I loved when Edge got the win. I loved the story that it went on to tell. It really put Edge in that kind of main event picture, and it was just a really cool story. I always loved the very first one. It was different, it felt good, and it just felt like something new. The second one is up there as well, but I had to pick the first one in this, so that's my WrestleMania 21 2005. The very first Money in the Bank is the best one that I've ever had.
I'm Ed Fries, joined by Ashton Pizarro, and we are from NXTea. We just want to say thank you again to Steve for allowing us to take part in what is the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match in history. For me, Money in the Bank ladder matches are great, but it's always the cash-in that people remember. But for me, the 1 year where the Money in the Bank match seemed better than the cash-ins was 2020, the year of the pandemic, when we got the cinematic Money in the Bank ladder match, fighting in Titan Towers. The chaos and stupidity of this match is fantastic. The run-ins from Brother Love, seeing Vince McMahon working in his office, Stephanie McMahon yelling at Dana Brooke. By the way, Dana Brooke holding that briefcase full of money, which is probably more worthwhile to her than ever having a titled opportunity, and she leaves it. I'm like, but there's money in the briefcase. Just take the briefcase and go home. Your job's done. Asuka winning. Asuka causing Baron Corbin to lose the match by fighting with Baron Corbin at the top of the ladder. Two men being murdered when Baron Corbin threw them off the tower. The AJ Styles stuff coming off of the Boneyard match and having AJ being terrified of the Undertaker and having those little spots. The back and forth with Bryan when Daniel Bryan and AJ are being forced out of McMahon's office and they're putting the chairs back and Bryan bows, all that stuff. This was the best Money in the Bank ladder match because this was the perfect year for a cinematic match, and these guys all did really good too.
For me, it had to be 2014 when Rollins won. Rollins, for me, is one of my favorite WWE superstars at the time right now. And it's just amazing to see him post-Shield breakup, fusing Dean in the match, and having people like Kofi, who Kofi never misses anything. Having people like Rob Van Dam and his amazing performances as always. And even Ziggler in there, and obviously having somebody like Kane help out Rollins win to catapult in that storyline with the Authority, and obviously leading to one of the best cash-ins we've ever had, probably in history, one of the most memorable ones too. But yeah, having that face-off in Rollins and Dean throughout the match, and having this being post-Shield breakup and highlighting stuff in such a way that he wasn't before. And that's what to me is one of the best matches, and it just one of the highlights for me when it comes to Money in the Bank.
So again, thank you, Steve, for letting us be a part of this. You can find me on Twitter here at Fries12584. You can find Ashton Pizarro over there at Ashton Pizarro on Twitter. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Bye!
Before I give my answer for you of what is the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match of all time, I have to give a couple of honourable mentions to WrestleMania 23, that big dive on the top of the ladder from Jeff Hardy going through Edge, going through a ladder, and of course Mr. Kennedy winning Money in the Bank was spectacular, as well as the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match, of course Shelton Benjamin being an absolute MVP in that, and of course Edge propelling himself to superstardom in that first ever Money in the Bank. Of course, without its original, it never can work all the way to today. But to give my answer, of course, I'm going to go with the most recent. Yes, it could be recency bias, but I'm going with the men's Money in the Bank ladder match from 2021. Not only is there a lot of depth in the roster, a great talent pool showing their skills throughout this match. We had the alliance of the Drip Drips, Seth Rollins and John Morrison. Of course, we had the great exchange with Riddle and Shinsuke Nakamura just to be Claymored at the same time via Drew McIntyre. We got flips over the top rope, one from Drew McIntyre, of course, which was spectacular in its own right, but of course then Ricochet has to one-up it, doesn't he? Of course, he'd actually run across the ropes, then jump onto a ladder, and then not long actually after that, he was actually pushed off the ladder by Riddle, who then landed perfectly on the ropes and springboarded himself to do a flip on top of all the athletes on the outside, where everyone is just wowed, including Riddle standing in the ring. Drew McIntyre's taken out of the match, of course, by Jinder Mahal, as long as Veer and Shanky as well. We had Riddle doing RKOs to everybody. Of course, he was still a part of the RK Bro stuff with Randy, of course, trying to build that tag team at the time. Of course, he was curb stomped for his trouble by Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins actually powerbombs Kevin Owens over the top rope, through a ladder to the floor, which was a really brutal looking spot. And of course, to finish off the match, just when it looked like Seth Rollins was going to win, Big E comes in, hits a big ending off the top of the ladder. A real throwback to sort of those 2000 ladder matches, seeing those big moves done off of there. Big E climbing the ladder and retrieving the Money in the Bank briefcase. Not only so many spectacular moments, a great roster in this match, but for me was the right winner as well. And Big E, dearly missed right now in WWE. We hope he gets a speedy recovery and gets back to the ring, hopefully at some point in the future. But for me, this has to be the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match of all time. And for those that are looking, going, I'm not sure about that, if you take one thing out of this video, go back on Peacock, on the network, wherever you're from, go back and watch last year's men's Money in the Bank ladder match. I can promise you it is worth your time and definitely holds its own up there as the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match in my personal opinion.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on your show. My greatest Money in the Bank ladder match should be in WrestleMania 23. That's right. I'm picking WrestleMania 23. Why? Because it was an all-star cast mixed with veterans and future stars. And I'm talking about Mr. Kennedy, CM Punk, Edge, Finlay, Jeff Hardy, King Booker, Matt Hardy, and Randy Orton. That's right. WrestleMania 23 was a jaw-dropping moment, and that match itself, all hands were on deck. You had Randy Orton RKOing everybody. You have Jeff Hardy, who sacrificed himself. And when I say that, he had a chance to get that briefcase, but he climbed on top of the ladder, turned around, gave him the signal, and whoop, flew out of the ring and landed on top of Edge while Edge was laid out on the ladder. Anyways, that was the best moment of everything about it, but Mr. Kennedy ended up winning that match. However, he didn't succeed later on with that briefcase, but that's for another story to tell. But for this one, I gotta say WrestleMania 23 Money in the Bank ladder match. Thank you, Steve. Take care, everyone.
Big thank you to Ovi Manise there from the Hard Hitting Wrestling Show. Was actually on his channel this week talking Money in the Bank. And of course, big thank you as well to NXTea as well, Ed Fries and Astrid. First time having her on the channel as well. Great to have them both involved, giving their takes on what is the best Money in the Bank ladder match of all time. Let's see the standings as it is so far. As we can see, 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches are in the lead right now. Of course, we've got Seth Rollins winning in 2014 at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, along with the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, of course, in 2020 at WWE headquarters. Both are on 2 votes each, and we've got a host of Money in the Bank ladder matches on 1 vote, including WrestleMania 21, WrestleMania 23, the Men's Money in the Bank ladder match from 2020, and the 2021 Men's Money in the Bank ladder match. So that's how things currently stand. It can all change before the end of the video, but it's time to get our next participant on here from Wrestling YouTube, and a first timer here on SCW. Does a lot of live streams. You can follow him during Raw, through SmackDown, AEW Dynamite, and pay-per-views as well. It is the one, the only Tino's time here on SCW.
The greatest Money in the Bank match, in my opinion, it has to be the first one that happened at WrestleMania 21. It had competitors like Christian, Kane, Shelton Benjamin, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, and Edge. And you know, at the time, we didn't know what it was going to be, and it happened at WrestleMania. And for a while there, it was just a WrestleMania event. But the first one is always going to be one that I'm going to remember. And Edge winning the match at the time, didn't know exactly what to expect, but oh, what it turned into, the cash-in and everything. But the match was absolutely awesome, and watching Edge climb the ladder and grab that briefcase was a memory that I will always remember, and exactly where I was at. So that is why the first ever Money in the Bank match will always be the greatest, in my opinion.
Salutation, guys. It is the Bump Boys. Miss_Wolves95. We have Dan. We have Joe, aka Joey the Dream. And we had to think, what is our favorite Money in the Bank? It is the original, back when Money in the Bank was at WrestleMania 24. Dan, what was your favorite moment about that WrestleMania?
It had to be Sheldon Mennerman screwing up, jumping off the ladder.
Doing the flip.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe?
I think my favorite is, seeing Matt Hardy come back and screw MVP. I think that was a really good match, or that portion right there.
Most definitely. And for me, honorable mention, John Morrison do the flip, the moonsault with the ladder, but I'd have to go CM Punk hoisting the Money in the Bank above his head. He would go on to cash in on Edge, thus making this the greatest Money in the Bank ever. WrestleMania 24. It's been the Bump Boys. Peace.
Massive thank you to the triple threat that is the Bump Boys, and you can see what they have done to the standings on their own. Single-handedly, they have put WrestleMania 24 at the top of the standings with 3 votes. We've got 3 other Money in the Bank ladder matches in second place, including WrestleMania 21, the first ever. We've got, of course, 2014 with Seth Rollins winning, and of course the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match from 2020 in WWE headquarters. And you can see a host of other Money in the Bank ladder matches there on 1 vote currently. So that's how things stand. We've got a couple of channels to go, but still a few more votes to come in. We're going to get someone that's been on a few of these now, and it's great to have him back. Always covering everything topical in pro wrestling, whether it's WWE, Impact, AEW, much more. It is the one, the only DC Wrestling is back here on SCW. Take it away.
The greatest Money in the Bank ladder match of all time, to me, has to definitely be, without a shadow of a doubt, the Money in the Bank 2013 ladder match. Now, this was actually a hyped up one, because this Money in the Bank ladder match was actually built up as the Money in the Bank All-Star match. And honestly, if you look at it, my God, what an all-star match it was. You had CM Punk, you had Randy Orton, you had Christian, you had Sheamus, you had Daniel Bryan, and to add on, you had the returning Rob Van Dam RVD. And if you look at that match, man, from start to finish, that match was just awesome. Some awesome spots, amazing good stuff. And following up with Randy Orton winning the Money in the Bank ladder match, which led to him, of course, SummerSlam and then the Authority. And then Daniel Bryan eventually winning the world title. Like, just that match to me was just awesome. So yeah.
Massive thank you there to DC Wrestling there, 2013 there. I really enjoyed that Money in the Bank as well there. Randy Orton picking up the dub in that one. But it's not changed anything to the top of the standings. So pretty much how is it going to play out at the end? We've got one more channel, but thankfully we've got more than one vote. Which Money in the Bank ladder match is going to be voted the greatest of all time? Well, I've got not one, but two people who are going to give us that answer for us. It's Liz and Jerry. And where are you from?
We're from
the WrestleSlam podcast. And for once, we actually agree on what we think is the best Money in the Bank match of all time. And that, of course, Jerry, would be
WrestleMania 21, the very first Money in the Bank contract match, ladder match. Why? Well, it's the original is always best. The very first one, everything else had to follow it. It propelled Edge's career to superstardom after he won it and cashed in previously against John Cena further on down the line in that career of his. So very good match. Some great stars in it. Obviously some other stars that we can't mention, but
so good to see high flying Shelton Benjamin, and we should see a lot more of that these days. So that was our choice, WrestleMania 21.
Thanks, guys.
Big thank you there to Liz and Jerry from the WrestleSlam podcast, a fantastic YouTube channel as well, doing previews, reviews, interviews, all sorts on their channel on WWE, AEW, Impact, and much, much more. So make sure to go and check them out. And they have the side there for us, looking at the top of the leaderboard there. That's right, the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match from WrestleMania 21 is the greatest Money in the Bank ladder match of all time there, with 4 votes at the end. With 3 votes in second place there is WrestleMania 24. Of course, CM Punk there lifting that briefcase high in the sky there for the first time ever in Florida. And of course then in joint third place we've got 2014's Money in the Bank, where Seth Rollins picking up the win. Of course that would lead him to Heist of the Century. And of course the women's Money in the Bank ladder match from 2020 at WWE headquarters. And a host of other Money in the Bank ladder matches there on 1 vote, including my one, which was the 2021 Men's Money in the Bank ladder match. So that's it. It's now your turn to get involved in the comments below. Have we got it right here on YouTube? Is the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match the greatest of all time? I look forward to interacting with you in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, share with a friend as well, let them know SCW is here, subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you know each and every time a video is released on the channel. Money in the Bank predictions are available on the channel for you right now as well, so make sure to go and check them out. A big thank you once again to everybody that collaborated, that got involved on this video. I'm looking to do the same again with SummerSlam, just a few short weeks away. But in the meantime, check out some of the videos popping up on the side of your screen right now. Thank you so much for watching. SCW as always, have yourselves a great day, and I'll see you next time.